Okay, so what we're going to talk about in here today is the Populist Party. All right, what do you think the Populist Party is? Zach, what you got? If you were going to guess.
A population of people.
All right, fair enough. Jackson, you got a guess? Closer. Bryn, you got anything to add to it?
I'm guessing their beliefs are like more popular than the others.
There you go. This is gonna be the Popular Party. It's considered the People's Party. If you were to look at it today, in today's terms, technically Donald Trump is a populist because he's not really a Republican. He's not really a Democrat. He is he's a People's Party person. So him, Andrew Jackson was a populist. Not McKinley. Theodore Roosevelt's technically a populist. But what the Populist Party it is the early progressive movement. All right, so do you guys remember what the progressive movement is? What is it? So okay, boil all that into one or two things. What are they reforming? Two big categories for it. Government reforms, and then what else? Yeah, like social reforms, right? Like human rights, labor works, child labor laws, women's suffrage, all that. All right, so the Populist Party is going to become the early progressive movement. The progressive movement today would be what you would consider the far left. All right, it is the Democratic Party. However, this is going to be where you have a lot of farmers moving in. And actually, the Populist Party is going to, who knows who Nathan Bedford Forrest is?
He was a former Confederate general and
Yes, he was. After this, he was. Do what? He was. Well, now, okay. The thing about Nathan Bedford Forrest is he was a cavalry general in the Confederacy. All right, probably the best cavalry general in the United States. He did fund and found the KKK. Now, what he did when he founded the KKK was it was meant to be for farmers who were being disenfranchised by the loss of slavery and by Reconstruction. Did you guys get to Reconstruction last year, or did COVID hit? All right, I feel you. All right, so Civil War. Yeah, you got through. Okay, so the Civil War happens. Who loses the Civil War? The Confederacy, right? So who is going to end up paying for the Civil War? The Southern states. All right, Reconstruction is basically, it starts off as it's meant to rebuild the country after the war, but what it actually ends up doing is destroying the South. It hurts the economy of the South. It breaks everything down. So you go from the South being, in the Civil War and prior to, the South was the economy of the United States. All right, the South was the powerhouse. After the Civil War and after Reconstruction, the South is what we consider it today. Very poor, very, well, maybe not today so much as the past. Up until probably like the 60s and 70s. Yeah, because then you get industrial works and factories coming in, and you still have places in Louisiana, Mississippi, a few places in Alabama and Tennessee that are just. It is the poorest thing. It's a lot of things. Like that's the only good thing. It's one of the good things about living in Alabama. We're not Mississippi.
Aren't we still kind of low though?
We are. Well, and that all pulls back to Reconstruction. Georgia suffered from it. The Carolinas, Virginias. Yes, they did do that in Georgia. And now, granted, Georgia has actually. Yes. Yes. Well, yeah. Atlanta was the hub. What was the other one? Yeah, Savannah. Very good. They also, and they did that not only in Georgia, but they did that in Tennessee, they did that in Virginia, they did that in the Carolinas, and they did that in Alabama. Do what? Yeah, well, and Alabama wasn't, Alabama wasn't quite up to this. Do you remember what that plan was called?
Oh, it's something with a snake.
It is something with a snake.
No.
What's the biggest snake you can think of? No, python. Yeah, anaconda. It's the anaconda plan. No. It's called the anaconda plan because the idea was to grab the waterways of the Mississippi and the Tennessee and grab the coasts and get the Gulf and slowly squeeze the South into surrender. Because technically the South should have won the Civil War. Everything going into the Civil War was in favor of the South, with the exception of industrialization. Industrialization in the North meant they had interchangeable parts for their weapons, and their weapons could be rebuilt, whereas in the South, if you broke your gun, you had to send it into the person who made it, and it would take a while to get it fixed. Yeah. But so what you see in the South is you see this huge loss of economy, of education. You see a destruction of the South as what it was. Yeah, under Reconstruction. Right. As the United States begins kind of pulling out of that, and as the United States kind of pulls away and moves towards industrialization, what people group are going to be very badly harmed by this? All right. Well, think about who might have had the biggest loss from the Civil War. What working group? Yeah, the farmers, right? All right. They've lost free workforce, which is a good thing, but they now have to start paying for it. Industrialization, how is that going to affect farmers, do you think? Yeah. Okay, so isn't it a good thing to have machines, though, on your farm? Less labor.
Yeah, but it takes jobs away from farmers.
It does take jobs away from farmers. All right, but what about cost? Do you think that machines cost a lot of money?
Yeah, but it's like a one-time.
It should be like a one-time payment, but what if, well, no. Think about it this way. All right, let's say that, Jackson, you're our cotton farmer, all right? And Bryn, you're going to own the bank. Zach, you're our lowly worker. You work for Jackson, all right? I'm sorry you always end up on the bad end of this. All right, so Jackson, you own a cotton plantation, all right? And you need a reaper. All right, it's a big tractor, right? So you don't have the money for the reaper. What are you going to do? All right, so Bryn is the bank owner, right? Bryn, there are no regulations right now. How much of a loan are you going to be willing to give Jackson? You going to give him whatever he wants, or give him maybe half of it? What you think? Are you going to give him half? All right. So there's no regulations to that. So you're going to give him half, and you're going to run an interest rate of like 50%. All right. You got half the money you need for your reaper, but you have to pay for the other half, and you're going to have to pay 50% back on that reaper. Who are you about to cut out of work? Sorry, Zach, you don't have a job anymore. All right, now let's say that you're basing all of this on the idea that your cotton crops are going to do very, very well this year. But they don't. what happens to you? You're fixing to go bankrupt, right? That's what happened to a lot of the farmers. A lot of farmers, so today we have this idea of crop regulation to a degree, like certain markets grow potatoes, certain markets grow corn, certain markets grow wheat, and there is a government regulation over agriculture, all right? They didn't have that. So if every single person in here, except for Zach, is a cotton farmer and Zach grows corn, who's going to make a better profit? The corn farmer, right? Because he's the only one that grew it. All right. So you have this overflux of markets, and you have these farmers going out and putting these investments in machines that they actually needed and that could have helped them, but they didn't have the product and they didn't have the profit from that product to then turn around and pay back the banks. So the banks are going to have farmers so far in debt that they can't do anything about it. All right, so this historic context right here. As the United States evolved into an industrial powerhouse in the decades following the Civil War, the growing strength of the railroads and the banks, coupled with the impact of mechanization on agricultural practices, challenged the financial stability of American farmers in ways never before experienced. Inventions such as the McCormick reaper and steel plows made the work of farmers more efficient, but had the side effect of putting too many smaller farmers out of business. If you were a big-time plantation owner, were you probably going to make it? No, big time. If you're a big-time person, you basically have like old money. So you're going to be okay. But if you were... What? No, you're not going to make as much of a profit, but you're still going to be okay. But the small-time farmers like Zach, who is a tenant farmer or something along those lines, he's going to have a big problem. Other farmers are going to struggle to make payments on expensively priced equipment, or they're going to struggle to pay high prices charged by the railroads to ferry their products back and forth. And they're going to have to borrow more and more money for these, and they're going to be charged unfair rates, and they're going to end up in a whole lot of trouble. All right, this is free. This actually isn't part of today's lesson, but it's free and will be productive for what we're going to do here in a couple weeks. All right, so say that after the Civil War, the United States economy is doing okay for itself, right? We've industrialized. So if you're going straight up in economy, is that a good thing or bad? Right, that's a good thing, okay? All right, what is a recession? That's a depression. What is a recession? No, doesn't go up. It stagnates a little bit. So it'll take a minor drop and it kind of stagnates. It doesn't go anywhere. All right, a depression is when it drops extremely fast. That's what we're going to hit in the 1930s. Okay? And the 1970s. The recession is what's going to happen, and what happened in 2008. Currently, we're going through a minor recession thanks to COVID. All right? If the farmers are taking out massive loans that they can't repay, what's going to happen to the economy? All right? Why?
For the baseline, the economy losing money. They think like they're supposed to get back technically, but they don't, and block them up.
Right. Okay. So what it's going to do is the economy is going to shoot straight up. All right. But what's going to happen? This is going to happen throughout the 1920s. So in the 1920s, you hit industrialization, you hit the rise of large cities, and the economy is slowly moving in a positive direction. But what's actually happening is there's no federal, this is a complete and total free market in pretty much every sense of the word, all right? What you end up having, though, is this kind of bubble that's moving up with the economy, all right? So as Wall Street investors are investing in different crops, as they're investing in different industries, as they're pushing out money to these places, all of the debt that's being incurred by farmers, all of the chances that are being taken without money actually backing it, that bubble slowly and slowly moves higher and higher with the economy. And what happens when a bubble gets too high? It pops. What's that going to lead to?
That's what's going down.
Well, okay, so what is it going to lead to in, yeah, the Great Depression? So this is kind of the legwork for the Great Depression.
Didn't it call Black Friday?
Yeah, that's when the stock market crashed, October 29th, I think it was.
Well, what was the one they called them?
Maybe, I can't remember. It was, I can never, dates, like I know as a history teacher, dates should be like my forte. Yeah, I got like years down. Specifics, eh. All right, so we've already talked about how industrialization impacted farmers during the Gilded Age. All right. Let's go down to this. All right, so on your page, you have this group Populist Party document. I want you guys to open, nope, it's this one. Yeah, open that up. I think there's 4 different things. Or is it just 3? Very cool, there's just 3. All right, so here's what I want you guys to do. I want you guys to do the legwork and the research for this. All right, so here's what you're gonna do. Jackson, you can take number 1 here, and we'll just go through like that. Bryn, you take number 2, and Zach, take number 3. So you have an excerpt of the party platform, or you'll have a reading specifically about something, and all of these bolded words here are defined for you guys down at the bottom. So if one trips you up, you got it. But read through your excerpt and then answer the questions that go along with it. And then we're going to come back together at, is about 30 minutes enough time to get this done, you think?
Yeah.
Brandon, will that be good for you? About 30? Zach, 30 good for you? All right, so we will come back together in 30 minutes, and you guys will tell us what you read and what your takeaway is. Does that make sense? You can give us a lowdown, so something that you could say in a minute. All right. Pause our recording. Okay. So, who had number 1? Jackson, did you have number 1? Did you have number 1? Yeah. All right. Tell us about the Populist Party platform.
So this is a preamble for their document, their starting speech for their fraction.
Very good.
It basically just it summed up the entirety of the nation during that time and described in detail like what were some things that were going bad in the country at the time and things that they changed.
All right, what things were going bad in the country at the time?
So they at the very end of the preamble, it says there are 2 distinct classes in America: beggars and millionaires. And so here, for example, when you find it, it says the people are demoralized. The state not paying voters, foreign places taking the first line of sedation, public opinion silence. Urban workmen are denied right to organize for self-protection, and labor unions beat down their wages, and for the fruit of the toil of doing their fully sowing to build up colossal fortunes for a few unprecedented in the future history of mankind. So just like
Yes. Very good. All right. So and I want to break this down into 2 or 3 parts. When we talk about this idea of there being 2 different classes, what does that sound like?
It sounds like moderation to me, or you need to go back and look at it. That you kind of look at it as a
You can. What do you mean by modern issues?
I mean, there's lower class, middle class, and upper class. So there's three classes, because we still have a distinct class. And right here, as they're saying, there's no in between days, there's only people who are working for the millionaires and are making nothing, or the millionaires who are paying nothing for the workers and making profit.
All right, very good. Okay, so what system of government would theoretically fix such problems?
Well, in theory, communism would work.
What is communism?
Well, it's like,
Yeah, okay.
in theory, that would fix the issues with capitalism, but the thing about, the Soviet Union, more socialism.
All right, that's what we're going to. So what is socialism?
Socialism is when everything's split between the people. Everything, even everything's owned by the state. So.
What do you mean owned by the state?
All the land owned by the state, all the housing owned by the state. No individual owns.
So who decides who gets what and what a business can or can't do?
Yeah, the thing, the problem with socialism in practice is people get greedy, just human nature, and they won't give up power for the very good of
Yeah, no, that's fair. But what group decides everything for everybody?
the people who lead the country.
Which is the
Like the president or the
broad term, starts with a G. The government, yes. All right, so the idea behind this movement is it's a push towards social reforms, which are socialist tendencies. All right, so this is what the Progressive and the Populist Party are moving towards at this point. They want government regulation of social issues. All right, but the issue with that is they have to find a way to legally sustain that, because what is our system of laws called? Yeah, the one document. No, the Constitution. Yeah, right. So that is everything that runs our government is in that Constitution, correct? All right, that's why you see so many amendments start popping up, because they added to the Constitution. They had to find a way to legally sustain the ideas of creating social reforms through the government. Does the Populist Party and the Progressive Party, do they want more or less government involvement?
I think, yes, so they want to create better working environment for workers, and they also want them to get the rich, the big corporations and individuals out of. They don't want them to have to.
Right. So they do want government regulation on these bigger issues. They want government regulation in factories. They want workers' rights. They want workers' unions. They want the government to be able to protect them from the large businessmen. All right. So, and the idea, the current idea of this, the current idea of like that millionaires are horrible, awful people, that stems from this time period. Now that's not necessarily true these days. There's millionaires that are jerkwads, obviously, but that's just a people thing. But during the 1900s and the 1800s, there were no kind of, there's no moral implications of working someone to the bone. All right, think about like a current or an example that we can think of and see, Sloss Furnace. You guys ever been to Sloss Furnace? Maybe. Do you know what Sloss Furnace is? Yeah, it's one of the most haunted places in Alabama. It's probably the most haunted place in Alabama.
No, but yeah, it was a steel factory.
Yeah, it's a steel factory. Well, no, it's still in operation. It's just not under.
It's for,
Yeah.
But no, for the main purpose of steel is no longer.
So the steel work at Sloss was extremely dangerous. It was extremely, well, I think the owner's name was Slag during the 1800s or 1900s. Was he the foreman? Yeah, he was the one who was over the workers in the actual furnace.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's the one who had such horrible, horrible working conditions. There was no way to regulate like that. If you were a desperate person, say that you had immigrated over and you were living under a bridge, you would go and work for him regardless. All right, because you needed the money to sustain your life. That was. Yeah. Yeah. So what the Progressive Party and what the Populist Party is saying is we need government to be able to protect us from being taken advantage of. So there needs to be some kind of wage that everybody can make. There needs to be labor laws for children. There need to be work hours that we can't exceed. All right, that's basically what the Populist Party is all about, with the exception of they also are going to, or that's what the Progressive Party is all about. The Populist Party is going to be the farming side of that. All right, Bryn, tell us about number 2. Just give us a rundown of what you read. Well, let's ask it this way. Okay, first and foremost, are populists capitalist supporters?
No, but like, at the same time, not really. Come on, they're not fully socialist and not fully capitalist.
All right, so what would they be more of? What did you read there, Bryn? Why, or how did you answer this question? Number 1.
I said that they think the government should have a strong hand in the economy. And then the examples I use are where it says that the telegraph, telephone, like the post office system, they think of, they're like a necessity. So, like the government should be in charge of it, because if the capitalists are, they're gonna like try and make money off of it, and it might be harder for people to use it if they can't pay for it.
Yes. So it's this idea of they are, and Jackson, you're right on that. They're not socialists. They are not the full, let's break everything apart. And in most cases, now there are progressives and populists who did push all the way back. But on the whole, it was just the idea of we can't let capitalism run unbridled. You know, it's got to have some kind of restrictions, because when you just have the free market, then you end up in, you can potentially end up in some very terrible situations as far as working goes, and as far as and then those few people running everything can run the government as well. All right, so it's this idea of where does that balance between government regulation and free capitalism? All right, did the Populist Party support the idea of unions? Yes. What is a union? Go Bryn first, and then you jump in, Jackson, if you want to. What is a union?
It's like, I know for teachers, it's like if they try to fire teachers, and like the teacher unions are trying to help the teachers keep their jobs. And I think it's like workers like supporting each other against like their boss or something like that.
Yes. That's exactly what a union is. A union is a collective of workers. You usually have to pay to get into a union. You have some kind of fee that you pay, and then you get protection from anything and everything. You bring up teachers, okay? That's a really good point. After 3 years, a teacher can get tenure, which means to get fired as a teacher, you have had to have done something basically illegal. Like they have to have, it's almost impossible to get rid of a teacher who has tenure. Why is that a good thing or a bad thing?
That's a good thing for the future. I mean, don't want to play like fucking.
All right, that's really good job security. All right, what might be the bad side of it? Would you say that? Huh? Yeah, well, okay, yeah, you go to prison if you get caught doing something that you ain't supposed to be doing. But what would be the bad side of having a teacher that can't be fired?
I guess like if there's a bad teacher, but they don't do anything bad enough to get fired.
Right. Have you ever had a teacher like that?
Yeah.
All the time.
Right. So like,
Like there's not very good teachers.
right.
There's
Right.
always that one teacher that sits there nice the whole year, and then over here they just say something stupid.
All right. Now imagine that in every field. What are the positive sides of unions?
It means that the workers fighting for all of their.
Mm-hmm. Right. You're protecting each other. Right.
So you don't lose your job for no reason.
Right. So like if you what is it? There's this factory that is close to my house, and we've got several friends who work there. They don't do workers union. So and do what? No, well, I did have some people that worked at Tyson, but this is called Topre. It's in Coleman. Alabama does not require unions. Alabama is not a union state. There are states. Michigan is a prominent one. When you work, you join a union. The unions are required there. You don't have to be in a union here. Yeah, and because Detroit was like the happening place too. Yeah. But so okay, like Alabama, if you join, if you go to work at Topre, there's not a union to protect you there. And we had a buddy who called in because he had a funeral to go to, and he had asked off for it, and they said that he couldn't go. He went and talked to the manager, and he was like, "Look, I have a funeral," and it was like his grandfather or something like that. And he's like, "I'm not going to be here that day." And they told him, "If you don't show up, you're fired." So he didn't show up, but if there had been a union there, would that have happened? No. All right, so that's a benefit of a union. What is a negative impact of a union? Why would it be a bad thing for the employers?
Because like in certain situations, I feel like they would have no say so or no jurisdiction over.
Yes. All right. Would you have to pay your workers more if they were part of a union, Bryn?
I don't know.
What do you think? Yes, you would definitely have to pay your workers more. So if you are an employer, like say, Zach, I'm gonna use you as an example. You're gonna get a good example this time. All right. Say that Zach has opened up a pen producing company. All right. Zach's Pens. All right. He has started off in we'll say he started off in Michigan since we were talking about it earlier. You've got a huge industry and all of that. You've done very well for yourself, have a huge market, but you keep getting pardon my French, you keep getting kind of screwed over by the unions. All right, are you gonna stay in Michigan or are you leaving? Why? All right. Are you going to move to a state that requires unions or not? Not, right? You don't want that mess anymore. All right. So that's a problem for employers. It's also a problem for states that have union requirements. All right. So there are benefits to unions. There's also negative aspects to those as well. At this time, there was nobody protecting the workers, though. So do you think that they're really concerned about the employer at this point? No, right? The workers are saying, you guys are taking advantage of us. We have to have some kind of protection. Okay, Populist Party, wanted to have a graduated income tax. What is graduated income tax? So if you and your pen company, you make 500,000 a year. Bryn, you make about 50,000 a year. Jackson, sorry, bud, you're gonna only make 15 a year. And I'm over here making $5.5 billion a year. Who is going to pay the most? No, your pen industry's doing great. Who's gonna pay the most in taxes under graduated income? Me. Who's gonna pay the least?
Wait, so he's got the better end.
Who? How does he have the better end?
He makes less money, but he keeps
So if like you have 5% on taxes for Jackson. Jackson makes 15,000 a year. 5% of his income is going to be gone taxes. All right. Me with my 5.5 billion, I may be paying 25% in taxes, but I'm still walking away with billions and billions of dollars. All right. That's what a graduated income is supposed to do, technically. Yeah, we will go that. We'll just leave it there. All right. There was one other thing. 90. Oh, okay. Why did the populists feel that transportation, telegraph, and telephone should be owned and operated by the people / the government? Why do you think that? Why would anybody want for communications to be owned by the government? Okay, yes, and in this time period, we're still, we're full on democracy. The people run the government, so it's if the government owns telephones and telegraphs, communications, then the people own that. Think about it in the idea of robber barons and monopolies. Why might they want communications owned by the people / government? I'm sorry, why might the people want the communications owned by the government / the people, as opposed to the robber barons?
Not biased towards any certain corporation or what the business owner.
That's good. Yeah. So think about it today. If Verizon and AT&T, which are currently like the gigantic big corporations, right? All right. Let's say that both of them were owned by one corporation. All right. There's AT&T and there's Verizon, but they are under an umbrella corporation called that. All right. So that owns both of these. What can that corporation do with the prices of those two? Right, because there's not true competition in that, right? All right. As a person, are you going to be able to keep up with the prices of that? Not necessarily, not if you're making 15,000 a year. All right, so the people want their communications owned by them and the government because they want to be protected. They want to have that free market, yes, but they don't want someone to have, you don't want a VAT to be created. It's kind of like Disney right now. We don't have a way to take over monopolies in entertainment because technically it hasn't been technically we can't just yet, but Disney owns pretty much everything with the exception of Fox and Warner Brothers. So if Disney has a message that they want to send, how are you going to evade it? You basically can't. Yeah, I mean they own everything. So if Disney was like, we are going to rule the world, Disney could probably do it. You know what I mean? And everybody would be behind them because they have all the advertising. Okay, very quickly, Zach, what did you read here?
I admit, I understood none of this.
All right, well, we're going to take the second paragraph because this is kind of the important bit. All right, the parties lie to us and the political speakers mislead us. We were told 2 years ago to go to work and raise a big crop. That was all we needed. We went to work and plowed and planted. The rains fell, the sun shone, nature smiled, and we raised the big crop that they told us to. And what came of it? 8-cent corn, 10-cent oats, 2-cent beef, and no price at all for butter and eggs. That's what came of it. Then the politicians said we suffered from overproduction. Overproduction, when 10,000 little children, so statistics tell us, starve to death every year in the United States, and over 100,000 shop girls in New York are forced to sell their virtue for bread, their miserly wages denied them. All right? They want money, land, transport, the abolition of the national banks, and they want power to make loans direct from the government. All right? What are they saying here? Are they upset with the government? Are they happy with it? They are upset. What do they mean by the parties lie to us? Who told them to go and make those crops? Right. All right, let's talk really fast about primary versus secondary sources, and then we're done. Is this primary or secondary source? If it's a speech, this one's a speech. I'm sorry, let me roll it up a little bit. Yeah, this is a primary source, okay? So primary sources are something that happened at the time. Speeches, journal entries, diaries, personal accounts. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't scroll up far enough. Any kind of record keeping, that is a primary source. What is the Populist Party platform? Secondary, primary? If it is the platform of the Populist Party. I'm sorry, so what is a platform politically? Right, it's what they're running on, right? So the platform is, these are the things that we stand for, these are the things that we're going to run on, these are the issues that we care about. So a platform is going to be, like if you were to go to Biden or Trump's websites right now, their party platform would be up. Is that a primary or secondary source? Yeah, so this is primary. So it's all primary sources. That was a trick question. I'm sorry. All right. What you guys are doing for, we won't go over that because we've technically already done it. You have this small little blurb, the small little discussion tab. What you do is, I want you to list one issue the Populist Party might face, might face today, and provide background for why you believe that issue pertains to this party, and then comment on 2 classmates. So if the Populist Party existed today, which it kind of still does, what would the People's Party focus on today? What's an issue? Does that make sense? Yeah. Can't use Corona. Corona's the obvious one. I want you guys to think about it. When have we had a case of yellow fever here lately? Keep trying, Zach.
I did try.
Keep trying, though. Keep on going.